I just had a coffee date, and it went really well. I rejected coffee date, and I wasn't going to talk about it, but I talk about everything. No, but seriously, I keep thinking maybe it'll help somebody. On paper, he was great. He's autistic, like me, studying neuroscience. And what I thought was working on a master's, he said was actually a doctorate. He lives farther away, but he goes to school in my town, so he'd be here all the time. Incredibly smart, spiritual, even gets the consciousness stuff that I talk about. And I could feel myself saying, this is great. This is really a cool guy. Until I got home and I started to process what my body was feeling when I was with him. Something happened. It was not his fault, but it triggered me. And I can't get past it. There came a point where it was obviously he wanted something to happen between us. And he got really excited. And he reached his hand over and just like lightly brushed my hand with his. I hate that he could be watching this right now, but for all the other women like me going through this, I think it's important still. There was an urgency in his energy that was like, he wanted me, and I didn't want him. I didn't know it in the moment. I didn't know because, again, he seemed just great. It was my body saying no, and the rest of me was saying yes. I just wasn't attracted to him. But I didn't know it in the moment because logic was telling me that he was a great guy, even though my intuition was telling me something else. My intuition was telling me that, yes, he's great, but he's not for me. And I was up all night thinking about it. It wasn't until the morning that I realized that it was the same feeling I had with my ex-husband. It was in the early stages, when I wasn't totally traumatized yet. It was just a feeling that if I say no to this guy, he's going to be really hurt. I can't handle that still. It's been 3 days since I told him there wouldn't be a second date. And I'm still feeling all that feeling of rejecting him. But it was an important thing for me to do. And I think that's why the synchronicities. Because it was 3 years ago, to the day when I met him, that I met Navy Guy. 3 years ago to the day that we met for coffee the day after Christmas. At the same coffee shop, at the same time. And I know from experience now that those synchronicities don't mean that whatever is happening is meant to happen. At least not in terms of a romantic connection. I knew that it didn't necessarily mean that there was supposed to be a romantic connection, but just that there's a lesson for me in this. And somebody in the comments posted too that a pattern is repeating. And it's just to pay attention to the pattern. And I believe this was an opportunity for me to listen to my body and not listen to logic. Because as wonderful as this guy was, and as much as I would love to have him as a friend, I just couldn't be what he wanted. So I believe I was given an opportunity to repeat a pattern from 3 years ago and do it right this time. As much as it hurt, I let him go. Weird as it sounds, I am grieving the loss of a friend I never had that I feel like I could have had if it hadn't been a date and I just met him at a coffee shop randomly. But he's the type of person. He's part of the reason he was wrong for me is because he's that guy who will resent me for not choosing him, for rejecting him. He's not the kind of person who can be friends with a woman that he's interested in. But I did what was right for me. I didn't continue seeing him, hoping it could turn into something. I listened to myself, even though I wasn't sure I was right. This is why I go really slow now. The last time I met a man I really liked, I didn't want a relationship, so I wasn't looking at him that way. And I rushed into it because I thought it didn't matter. He didn't want a relationship either, and so we were just going to have some fun together, and that's what I wanted. And the opposite thing was happening with my body there. This guy on paper was all wrong for me. I don't think I ever would have gone out with him if I wasn't looking for a fling. Besides the fact that he was just way too good for me. He was just not my type. But my body repeatedly kept saying yes to him. With him, it wasn't an awkward bristle that made me feel like something was wrong. It was an electric shiver that said he's the one. Or maybe a one,
Anyway, we both had issues, and neither of us were ready for what we had. I knew it, he knew it, but neither of us wanted to end it. There came a point when I saw that it was going to have to end one way or another, and I didn't want to do it. I so badly didn't want to hurt him. But it wasn't just because I was falling for him and found him attractive. It wasn't even because I'm a wonderful person, full of humanity, and never want to hurt people. At that time, I had just come out of a 20-year marriage in which I had spent 20 years rejecting my husband, or so I'd been told. In reality, I just didn't feel like sex sometimes, and he was blowing up at me for it. This is called sexual coercion, by the way. So being heavily coerced meant that I was giving into sex that I didn't want very frequently. This caused my nervous system to go on high alert, and my sexuality just completely shut down. I was fully impotent by the time my husband moved out. So here I was 2 years later dating again and feeling it all come alive again with this man, including the trigger. Because I'd been so conditioned to believe that every little thing I did that my husband didn't like was rejection, I was now very sensitive to rejecting men. On Substack, I wrote about this, and I described a flashback in which I'm standing at the kitchen window and my husband is behind me, lightly touching my back. He triggers me. And in this flashback, I'm scolding myself for rejecting him again because I didn't reciprocate his touch. I come out of the flashback, sitting across from this man at a coffee shop, doing the same thing. He was making a bid for affection, and I was not reciprocating. And in that moment, I wasn't thinking that it might be inappropriate for him to be reaching across the table to touch me on a first date like that. I was shaming myself for rejecting him. My body was still suffering that conditioning. My body was telling me this isn't the man for me, and my mind was scolding me for believing that. I was shaming myself for not being what he wanted. And I did the same thing with the other guy. Even though I was just beginning to fall for him, I knew that I was going to have to break it off. He was in a really tough spot emotionally himself and was definitely not ready for a relationship. But I couldn't do it. I could not reject him. So I let him do it. I let him reject me. As painful as it was not as painful as rejecting him. I cried for a couple of months and stalked his socials, and then I moved on. I talked about it all here, but I failed the task of rejecting a man. This time I didn't, and it fucking hurt, but I did it. Another round, we need to talk. Jennifer, I'm sorry if I was dismissive earlier in my comment. I was a little bit triggered by what you said, because you did with one comment what everyone around me had done my whole life that led me to an abusive marriage. Sharing a really vulnerable moment in which I had finally broken a pattern that had repeated throughout my life, and I was finally listening to myself and listening to my body. And you essentially told me that I shouldn't do that. I didn't listen to my body. I dismissed it and told myself that it was just trauma, and gaslighting myself led me to meeting my dream guy. Only my past friends would know this about me, but I used to knit a lot. It was a coping mechanism for my marriage. I became very well versed in a lot of different types of yarn, including wool. I'm wearing a wool sweater right now because of that research. What I love about wool is that it moves with my body. It helps me stay warm when I'm outside and cool when I'm inside. It doesn't ask me to be anything I'm not. All my life, people have told me that wool is a fairy tale. It doesn't exist, and they have talked me into synthetic fabrics. It's cheaper. It's more available. It's more realistic. I stopped listening to my body, and I started listening to people who told me that I should settle for a different kind of fabric. Still does the job, even if it's not just right for me. Then I rediscovered wool, and I love it, and I'm not going back, because my body feels more comfortable with it. Anytime I have to put on one of my other sweaters that are not wool, I don't like it so much. Here's the thing. I don't actually have to push past my trauma to find my dream guy, because my dream guy is not going to trigger me. My dream guy is not going to make me bristle and want to get away from him as fast as I can. I'm not going to feel uncomfortable around my dream guy. No matter what my trauma in the past, if a man is really right for me, my body's going to know it. Problem is that society has told women that the dream guy is the goal, and it's not. Society says we're being too picky, and we're hanging on to old trauma, and we really just need to heal so we don't lose out on this great guy. My goal is to feel safe in my body, and then to go out and do good in the world, to make change. I can't do that if I don't feel good in my body. I can't do that if I'm chasing my dream guy. My goal in life is to do everything I can to be exactly who I am and use all of my gifts, body and soul, to do everything that I was built to do. If a man wants to come along and join me in that, I would love it. But he has to be the right one. I'm willing to wait for the perfect wool sweater.